I'm going to do it like. Good morning, everyone. We're about to get started. We're just letting a few extra people in who are joining now. So we'll kick off in about 1 minute. All right, everyone. Hi, more people coming in. Welcome, welcome. And don't think your computers are broken if you're trying to talk and you can't unmute yourself. We have that set up for a reason, and I'll go through that in a minute. Just gonna let a few more people in. All right, it's around 10:01, so we're going to go ahead and kick off, and we'll probably have some people continue to join us this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Waldhorn. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Sports Innovation Lab. Thank you again for joining us this morning. In the light of the challenging environment we find ourselves in today and for the near future, we've set up this Ask Me Anything, this AMA session, to foster a discussion that can hopefully lead to new ideas, strategies, and opportunities for the sports industry so that we can adapt and we're looking to push forward through this uncharted territory. So this is the first Ask Me Anything session that we are hosting, but if everyone who joins us today finds this valuable, we'll certainly be hosting more in the future. So a few things, I'm just quickly going to share my screen before we get started, some rules of engagement today. Let me go ahead. So the way that it is going to work, again, don't be cursing at your screens. You're on mute and we control that. Only the host, myself and Josh, can unmute you. And we'll be happy to do that as the conversation progresses if there's something we'd like to discuss with anyone. To ask questions today, we are asking you to type into the chat window of your Zoom. I will show you in a moment how to do that if you're not familiar with the software. This is being recorded, so we had a lot of requests for people who could not join but who wanted to watch this, so we will be recording this session. And this isn't Ask Me Anything because we want you to ask anything. It's a challenging time right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we believe there's a lot of opportunity to unite and band together and push forward. And this is a place to really put all ideas and all questions on the table. So don't hold back. Josh is ready for anything. So to show you, if you're not familiar with how the chat functionality works, this is your Zoom screen. You will see at the bottom a bar where it says join audio, start video, and there is a chat icon that says chat. You want to click on that and a window will appear to the right of your screen. You will see there's a little box where it says type message here. There is an option to send the message to everyone or just to the host. We've got it set up so that messages are public. We want to have everybody see each other's questions, but you do have the chance to just send a message directly to myself or Josh. And this is what it will look like. So we'll be able to see your questions. I'm going to be fielding, Josh, the questions, as a lot might be coming in. We'll be selecting questions, hopefully get to most of them. If not, we can have follow-ups as well. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to end the screen share now. If you also have any questions about how to use the functionality during the event, no worries, you can just type that into the chat function as well. Before we get started, a quick introduction. Josh Walker is the co-founder and president of the Sports Innovation Lab, where he leads our roster of over 60 clients in the sports industry on how to create breakthrough fan experiences and prepare their business for the future fan, something we call the fluid fan. He's a former vice president at Forrester. He was responsible for launching the company's Forrester Wave evaluation framework, which was designed to help companies innovate by connecting through the right technology buyers. He's been an entrepreneur in residence at General Catalyst. He's been a startup founder, really a big portion of his career. And he's led a lot of those startups through very challenging times. So we're very excited to hear his perspective on all those things today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Josh, who we did receive a few questions before this AMA started. So he's going to go ahead and start with those questions. But as he's answering those, again, please submit your questions into the chat box. So Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Gina. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining this morning. I mean, if you've been following some of the messaging that we've been putting out on LinkedIn, it's very important that we continue to push ahead here in this industry. I think that your participation today is a very good signal that you have the right mindset to gather information, to be thinking about new ways of operating. And Gina mentioned that in my career, I've managed my companies through some very challenging times, and I really wish that wasn't the case. But it is also very normal for that to happen. You know, markets are cyclical. You know that there are unexpected events that occur. So being prepared and being agile in these times is really the most important thing. So I'm very eager to answer your questions. And I also want to get your feedback. So I think what would be helpful to get you guys going is I'm going to launch a quick poll. And I want you to very quickly weigh in on what you see on your screen right now. Because I think when you look at what's happening across the world, we have seen a variance in response. And I think a lot of this sometimes has been dictated by the local governments. A lot of leagues and teams don't have control over the decisions they're making because some of the municipalities are making those decisions for them. But what we've seen is a spectrum of response. And I think this is going to kind of govern our conversation today. We have a lot of organizations that have gone whole scale and canceled events. We've had some organizations that have decided to postpone events, to delay perhaps portions of their schedule or revisit a tournament in the future. And we've had people that have decided to go digital only and play without fans in the building or with only mission critical people. So your responses here are really getting yourself in the mindset of what other executives in the industry need to really consider as they're going forward. So I have 21 responses now. I'll wait for a few more and then I'll let you guys know where we're at. All right, if you haven't voted, you've got 10 seconds left. All right, so let me show you what you guys said. Can I get an amen? You guys see the results? Yeah. So it seems, again, that a lot of us are in the mindset that there's an opportunity to postpone games and revisit them. And I think that that's a really important consideration right now because there's a lot of different events that had both media expectations aligned with them, with sponsorship value that was aligned to them. And obviously there's the whole complexity of refunding or issuing new tickets. So those are the three main revenue sources that are in jeopardy when executives are making this decision. Not to mention really a huge issue for a lot of people, which is the idea that they have to take care of their staff and people that are at these venues. So with that, I'm gonna stop talking and get to the point of this whole event and let you guys ask me anything that's on your mind, and I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Great, Josh. How about we've got a question to start with. Looking for advice on how to engage with venues, including the tone after things stabilize, but before things turn to normal.
Yeah, so we've been talking to a lot of our clients over the last few weeks, and we just finished up some major research on the area of designing breakthrough fan experiences at the venue. And what was interesting is that a lot of these venue operators have a mindset that has prepared them for things like incident response. If there's a terrorism act or if there's something that is, you know, an immediate threat to the facility. Many of them have contingency plans for blackouts and other sorts of backup utilities and power programs. They've done a lot of crowd intelligence where they've used cameras to figure out where crowd flow is. So if they had to evacuate a large group, they could do that without as much of a problem. What's really fascinating is that there hasn't been a lot of conversation about the health of the attendees that enter the building. And I think when you re-engage these venue operators after the wake of this conversation, a big piece of your mindset needs to be that they're probably struggling with how to address that opportunity. And there's a very delicate balance between the privacy of those people that attend those games and what's possible. Now, I say that in light of understanding that this is a time when Clear, one of our customers, is using biometrics to help do age verification and help people enter the stadium. So there does seem to be, within sports fans in particular, a real willingness to share some of their personal identifiable information in exchange for feeling safe in a venue. And I think the more you can acquire that lexicon, that language, and that posture when you're talking to venue operators, the more willing they're going to be to talk to you about your solution and your opportunity.
What are you hearing from other leaders in the industry in terms of guidance, advice, feedback?
Yeah, well, yesterday we just published some of the thinking that, and I see Ashwara is here, some of our thinking from our leadership board on the immersive media side of things. It's been striking that most of the planning and strategy and innovation around media has been, how do we make these, phenomenal media productions that give fans this immersive experience where they can change camera angles and they can, chat and they can bet and they can do all of these really exciting new things. But the industry has yet to figure out how to do a very quick triage production, right? Which is the situation we're in right now, where you need to get a production crew in there that can do a virtual production that is interesting, engaging, and probably in a very different format than a normal live game is broadcast. And that is, I think, when this thing settles, where a lot of the best thinking will be applied, which is in a situation where we don't have enough fans to cut to the fan cam or to, get that noise and that excitement into the broadcast. What are we doing? And what vendors provide solutions to augment a media production around that? I think that's really, really important. And I think that that's one of the things that's key on people's minds, because they have to maintain these broadcast rights. There's a lot of them that are going into these negotiations, and having this quiet period or not having a solution for sponsors or media rights holders is going to really hurt people in negotiations.
Any insight between the announcement between the National Women's Soccer League and Twitch? And is that potentially paving a path for a solution?
We've seen Twitch be very aggressive over the last 12 months and 18 months in acquiring some of this, what I would call niche programming. And when the big broadcasters aren't willing to pay the rights for either women's sports for some reason, or a foreign sport that's trying to go global and reach an international audience, Twitch has become a de facto place to do alt streams. And for, people who aren't nerds in the industry, an alt stream is when you create that digital sort of companion to the linear broadcast. And I think that what the women are doing on Twitch is going to open up all that functionality that Twitch has on the sidebar for donations, which is going to be very popular with women's sports in general. There's a whole set of sponsors that are really about making sure that women's sports is funded, especially at the youth level. And I think donations and contributions and that type of brand engagement around the Twitch product will serve the women's soccer team and other female sports very well.
How stable are the leagues and individual sports teams financially? Can they live through a longer time of no games being played, as they probably are still in need of paying players' salaries?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to anybody that's on this call, but there's a very clear delineation between the have and the have-nots. The larger markets and the larger leagues are going to be able to weather this storm much better than the smaller teams and leagues. And that's why we're very conscious about providing a lot of what we can do as a group, but also as a network, to make sure people are meeting the right people to help them sustain them through this period of time. Those smaller leagues that have been running cash strapped are going to be in a very tough position right now. And that's no surprise to anybody. So what we need to see, and what is, I think, a very important opportunity, is for brands to step up and to carry those leagues through this period of time. I think the fans will be enormously grateful for that. I think if a MasterCard, if a Bank of America comes in and says, we're not going to let this league suffer during this period of time, the brand equity they build with those fans is going to go miles. I think it's a really strong, and if sponsorship teams at brands aren't thinking about that opportunity, I think they're missing out on what really matters to the consumer.
What should athletes be doing during this time?
Yeah, this is where I always trust Angela's perspective on this, and I just got off the phone with her yesterday about what her voice is during this period of time, and for many of you on this call, you know that she's on maternity leave, so she's watching this from the sideline, but she's incredibly engaged. And I think when she talks about this, and she had an experience in the Olympics with, I think it was the Zika virus and SARS and some other stuff that just like threatened her ability to play in the Olympics. And she remembers the personal, sort of pressure that put on her to know that she might be missing out on a moment in her life that she's been training for. And none of these athletes are in a position to comment on the virus. None of them should pretend like they're experts or, give fans advice on what they should do. But they have a very powerful platform to continue to entertain fans during this period of time. And one of our leadership boards is this concept of athlete-driven media. We know the athletes are active on social media. They just need now more assets to play with. So I believe the league should be releasing media rights to these athletes, giving them highlight clips of their, playing career, letting them do voiceover commentary on, historical games, really setting up an opportunity when games are not being played for these athletes to give them the behind the scenes thinking that went into those games, trash talk with some other athletes so that there's an entertainment component to this, and really engage with fans directly that are incredibly disappointed that they're not getting to see the end of the season or, a tournament that they were looking forward to.
That's great, because we just had a question come in about how athletes, teams, and leagues can best fill the live sports entertainment vacuum. So I think you touched on that a bit. And do you think there's a CSR, corporate social responsibility component to that?
Yeah, I honestly don't know enough about that, but that's certainly where some of this budget should come from. CSR, is a community engagement budget. So there's a social responsibility to making sure that the, young fans stay engaged. There's two things that happened in the last 2 weeks that make me hopeful that this is something that's going to be revisited. One is a group is working on, when we were kids, we had to do the President's Challenge and push-ups and sit-ups. And, there's a group that's revisiting that idea because that's very outdated. So how do you engage, young kids in school and make this less about the game itself, but about physical activities? So that group reached out to us for advice, and it's really good to see that that energy is there during this period of time. And then the other thing that I would say is that there's just this huge opportunity for athletes to engage with these kids playing Fortnite or, 2K, and just engage them on the platforms they're already on. And it's really, really exciting when that happens, and kids love that direct access to them.
What do you foresee changing at the venue in the short term or, following the crisis?
I think there has to be a conversation about how we screen for the health of people that are attending these events. And I don't know what the right balance of doing that is. I mean, it seems very dystopian and Orwellian and all those really scary things that we think about when it's like, hey, like we need to make sure you're okay to come here. But I think when people go to a very crowded area and they're sitting around a lot of strangers, they're going to want a little bit more comfort that that's happening. So I don't know where that happens, if that happens beforehand, if that happens after the fact, but we've had so many conversations with venue operators about knowing who's in the building, right? That's a constant refrain we hear from people. It's like, and that's not a CRM system. You know, a CRM system that gives you somebody's email address and address and age and even demographic is not going to tell you whether or not they're healthy enough to attend your event or pose a threat to your consumer. So I do expect to have a lot more conversations about this in the near future.
What are some immediate short-term ideas, solutions, strategies that you're seeing or put in place or that you believe are appropriate?
Well, I don't expect to see too much in the next week or two. I think everybody's scrambling, and I think that's fair and understandable. But the media companies that are sitting on archived footage, the companies that already have automated production capabilities and artificial intelligence to clip highlights. I think I tweeted maybe a week ago, Major League Baseball just released a search engine that literally lets you look up every single play by play across years and years of footage. I made the very off-color bad joke that I live in Boston. I was looking up my childhood hero, Bucky Dent, and his footage is in there. So the idea that you can go back and you can look at every Astro that was hit by a pitch or every, ground ball that was fielded by your favorite shortstop is one of those things that, again, I don't think that's a huge lift for a lot of these media companies. They just need to get the lawyers out of the way and release rights that are perhaps protected by somebody else.
From a sports business and operations standpoint, what impacts are you expecting on the workplace of the sports industry, and what might we be able to be prepared for or plan for?
Well, I think everybody on this call is doing the first thing that I would recommend to anybody in this industry, and that's gather information and start thinking about the skills you're going to need in, sports 2.0. When this whole thing lifts, and again, the gray hairs tell me that it will, you're going to be able to be in a position to position yourself differently to the organizations you want to work for. I think that a lot of the sports industry has relied on free talent straight out of school that wants to work in sports. I think that's been the mode of operation for decades, and I think that they've had the luxury that very smart people will work for very little money because they're working in sports. I think we all need to take a step back. I think we need to pause and think about the skills and the organizations we're building. And I think we need to think about which of those skills are going to help us in situations where we have to operate quickly, because we talk about the fluid fan, but this market is clearly fluid and every market is fluid. So you have to be prepared for these contingencies, and you need people in your organization that have pattern recognition of other crises. You have to have people in your organization that have pattern recognition of other industries and how those industries deal with things. So you can't grow talent straight up from the intern level and be prepared for things like this.
Any advice on how to support collegiate specifically versus professional athletes who are no longer have the opportunity to finish out their senior seasons? Anything from a fifth year or other ideas?
Yeah, I would love to see the companies we know that are expert at this step up and make incredible highlight films and recruiting films for these kids. We know that Huddle and Max Preps and, Team Snap and a lot of these like registration platforms from the youth market are really pretty good now at compiling highlight films and sizzle reels for young high school athletes. I think those platforms have a real opportunity here to extend that to the college world, do something that they can really enhance the, production of what it is that these kids are missing out on by playing on the, national stage, and try to give them the assets they need to either pursue a professional career or find a job in coaching or, whatever it is they want to do in business. This is a missed opportunity for a lot of these young people to showcase what kind of individuals they are, not just what kind of athletes they are.
Great. Do you have any thoughts or insight into whether leagues like the NBA are going to be paying players their full salaries, or if there's going to be adjustments there? And what about when it comes to revenues from media or sponsorship revenues? Are those things you believe they will look to, collect in full?
Yeah, I was just on a call with one of our agency clients yesterday, and the concept of make good is something that is going to become a very contentious legal issue in the coming weeks and months. It's going to span everything. It's going to span media rights, make goods. It's going to span advertising, make goods. It's all kinds of things. So when it comes to players' salaries, I'm doing as much research on this as is relevant to our clients. And I understood pretty clearly that if the NBA continued to play, there was a different contingency plan in their collective bargaining agreement than if they didn't. And so a lot of what I think the leagues were trying to mitigate by playing in front of a digital audience was maintaining some of the collective bargaining clauses that were in there that they didn't have to get into this negotiation. So what we put out yesterday is the clearest vision I have on this at this stage, which is that most people are looking at the NFL, which is not in season, to start thinking about how they will plan for things like this. And I'm not sure that the collective bargaining agreement that was just agreed upon in the NFL addressed something like this. The lawyers published something that was 400 pages long, so the chances that it wasn't in there is really small. But again, I don't think people had an expectation that this could happen. So,
do you think the Olympics are going to go forward?
Yeah, again, I am not in a position to predict the future, and my opinion is just an opinion. You have to look at the data that's out there and the pattern that we're seeing across the Sports Innovation Labs database of cancellations, postponements, and digital-only events. It seems that it is certainly more likely, given the acceleration of cancellations, that the Olympics will be in jeopardy this year. It's hard to imagine how they will conduct the Olympics given everything else that we can see in our data. But again, my opinion is just informed by what I'm reading and seeing is like everybody else.
So a multi-tiered question here. I'm going to combine a couple different questions that we're getting. One, would love to hear your thoughts specifically as it relates to social media and the opportunities for social media from both businesses and athletes. And we got a lot of follow-up questions around the collegiate athletes and the opportunity for professional athletes to support those athletes, and just any other general thoughts about those that are impacting. And you did share, highlight reels, et cetera, looking to enter things like the NBA, WNBA, who now have had, that cut short. Is it an extended time period where they have more of a chance to pitch themselves or show their skills? So starting with maybe social media in general, and then any other specific thoughts on collegiate applications.
Yeah, very different questions. So let's take one at a time. So the first question's really about social media, and the deals recently across the industry have shown an acceleration and an uptick in the adoption and use of the platform called TikTok. Now, TikTok, for those of you who are not on it, is a place where you can issue challenges to other people that are on that platform. And we have seen an incredibly creative use of that from a user-generated perspective to challenge somebody to do a skateboarding trick, to challenge somebody to do a 360 snowboarding, spin or grab or whatever it is. That platform is ripe for this. And if I'm a college athlete and I've had my season cut short, I'm going to go to the local baseball field and start cranking home runs and challenging all the young people that are out there to try to do the same. Those kids are suffering because they're probably little leagues are being canceled right now and everything else. Take that to basketball. You go down to the local court, you do a bunch of 3-point shots, and you challenge all your fans to do the same. That platform is ripe for this. And we have seen so much traction and interest in that platform from that perspective that it's a place for brands to issue these challenges, support these challenges, amplify these challenges. I truly expect that we're going to see more of that in the next couple of weeks as people start getting into actuating their strategy and not reacting to what's happening. That's a perfect place for this to happen. So that's my strongest recommendation. And we have a client, the World One League, whose whole business is fixated on this opportunity to launch challenges, compete with the fastest athlete in the world, and see how you stack up. And this has been an idea that people have had for a long time. And I think this is absolutely the right time to put that thing into practice. So that's the social media side. I'm very bullish on TikTok as a key place for this to happen. Instagram and Twitter will play a huge role. WhatsApp is a great place for people to be talking to each other. And we've seen that happen in Europe around football. Football's been using WhatsApp. European football has been using WhatsApp very aggressively to, push out campaigns and special offers, and Adidas has been aggressive in that sense. So one campaign you guys may not know of is Adidas has this campaign where if you're playing an amateur league and you're missing a player, or that player lets you down all the time, you can get a professional player to show up by using WhatsApp. And obviously the competitors are not going to like when that person shows up. So it's a very clever ad and campaign for Adidas, but those are the types of things that I expect people to do more of on social. I think we're going to see a huge amount of creativity in the next few weeks on that.
Awesome.
And then I skipped the college thing, but
I think you touched on it quite a bit. Actually. I think
good.
I think we're just some newcomers have a lot of interest in that area.
Okay.
So how do we view this market opportunistically? Does this free up in-year sponsorship dollars or venue availability, talent? We've got a great comment that is identifying potentially opportunities in a time like this for smaller or challenger leagues to step up.
Yeah, let me see what maybe this is a good time to pause. Let's do this. I'm going to launch my second poll, and then we'll revisit this question. So I think what I'd like to do, as you guys are asking me these questions, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, where are you guys looking for guidance right now? In this period of time, where are you turning, and who are you looking to help you navigate what's going on? So I'll leave this open for a little bit. We've got about 40 people here. So why don't you guys take a few seconds, think about this, and somebody show some love to the technology vendors, poor guys. All right, I'll give you guys 10 more seconds to weigh in here. Okay. So interestingly, and not surprisingly, you guys are some of the smarter people in the industry, because you're looking at areas where other industries have actually dealt with things like this before. And I think that's my strongest advice. I was sharing with my team yesterday that one of the places I look is to the medical community, because as they're searching for a cure and as they're trying to get their hands wrapped around some of this data, they're expert at using wikis and virtual conferencing to get all the industry leaders from around the world together to convene. I think healthcare can be certainly a very powerful way to get some guidance on virtual stuff. And I think that finance has been through a number of these situations where they've had to triage in extreme crashes and things of that nature. So they also have pretty good redundancy plans in place and business continuity strategies. So I'm glad that you guys are already thinking that way and looking that way. So Gina, I apologize. Do you want to fire away again?
Yep. So the question was, how do we view this market opportunistically? Do you think this frees up in your sponsorship dollars or venue availability or even talent? Should there be opportunities in like this potentially for smaller challenger leagues?
This is definitely a challenger league market. The ability to do things from scratch is going to help a lot of our customers that are starting new leagues. Interestingly enough, every single new league we've talked to has been preparing for the idea that they're going to launch the league and nobody's going to show up. So you can't start a new property and expect to have people in the stands. We saw this with the American Football League when they tried to get going. The XFL has been pretty successful in getting fans in the stadium, but they've done a lot to make that happen. When you look at Athletes Unlimited, the World One League that I just talked about, Karate Combat, and some of the leagues we've talked to that are starting up professional volleyball and other sorts of competitions, they have for a long time in their business planning built a contingency plan for green screening those competitions so that they can pipe in a virtual background, that they have really designed their production capabilities to have close camera angles so you don't see the crowd in any of the shots. The swimming league that's out there has lighting that focuses everything on the pool. You have no idea whether or not anybody's there live watching that. I think that is one of those situations where you look at what those folks are doing. They are addressing this from that perspective. Does this free up sponsorship and stadium availability and things like that? I mean, I think it's just way too early to tell how that's going to be affected.
What do you think is the long tail of all of this? What is going to be the longest, kind of the long-lasting impact?
I hope it's a long-lasting positive impact. And that's not just me being a cheerleader for the industry. It's me being optimistic that in a lot of our conversations and leadership boards, what people look for is an ROI for every investment that they're making. And they scrutinize the P&L to try to find money for innovation. Sometimes there's something that shocks the system and makes those conversations irrelevant. And it forces people to the table to have the conversations they should have been having in the first place. And I hope that this is that long tail. Now, I've been through a number of things in my career where people do that for a little while and then they forget and they go back to business as normal. I certainly am committed to reminding people of the billions of dollars that we're losing right now because those contingency plans are not in place, that we don't have the digital agility to do this. Because I think that there's a lot we could have done in advance of this to not prevent this from happening, but to be in a better position to respond to it.
All right, just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, you guys can add them into the chat window. We had a bunch of people just join over the past 5 minutes. Any unique esports opportunities to consider in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, look, esports is not going to be the solution here. It's crazy to think about it from that perspective because everybody's immediate knee-jerk reaction is that, oh, well, they just compete digitally. There's a couple reasons for that. One is this pandemic hit Asia first, and a lot of the esports tournaments and leagues were affected well before US leagues were. So there's already a lot going on in that world to try to figure out how they can maintain their own operations when international travel was key for them. I don't think people understand that esports happens and is, you know, streamed virtually, but a lot of these teams have to travel internationally for their competitions. And in conversations that we have with people that are working in esports, that own esports teams, they're not as optimistic that this can be as quickly used as an alternative to where we're at. So one thing to consider is this may improve the way that we design our networks for streaming, because one of the things that prevents esports from happening at a competitive level in remote locations is that they can't create parity between two teams because the network speed can't be guaranteed. And that has an impact in an odd way for sports betting because everything needs to be on this high frequency network so that we can actually guarantee that the sports books are operating at the right speed, that the streams are happening concurrently, and obviously that will have a large impact on esports. So I think where esports competitions are not going to be able to be a good distraction, certainly competitive video gaming should be. Where there's not money on the line, but there's social gaming. That is where I think there's going to be the best opportunity to keep young fans engaged and, you know, keep the athletes in front of these people.
So this industry is, you know, traditionally built and businesses done around in-person events and networking. So can you share your thoughts on the business side of things? Should people be looking towards all virtual meetings? Should people plan for in-person events at all for you know, the foreseeable future? Any advice there?
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get this earlier. This is the most important question for our industry right now. If you're in sponsorship sales, if you're in business development, if you even manage a team of developers or product people, you need to stay in touch with those people and have productive conversations. This is absolutely not the time to just wait it out and see what happens. And so Zoom, the platform we're using right now, Microsoft Teams, we've been doing all of our work over the last week to really think about how we can get our leadership boards together, convene, and let them break off into breakout rooms. We do master classes, which are very iterative, sort of ideation and whiteboard sessions. There are tools for all of this stuff. And as an industry, we've been very slow to adopt them. As an individual, I've been very slow to adopt them, but immerse yourself in it. And in fact, given the fact that you're not commuting, given the fact that, some of your things have been postponed or delayed, use this time to become an expert in this, right? Explore the whiteboard features, right? And do things that are going to give you much more confidence that you are able to do very interesting meetings with your teams and with your customers. I mean, that polling feature, I didn't know how to do that 2 hours ago. It's about immersing yourself in some of this stuff that's going on, trying it, and being very cool with failing, because we should all be learning how to do this stuff virtually. It's going to drive our business forward. It's a bit of a pep talk, but there are tons of tools out there. And I mean, Gina, you should mention the Slack community that we're putting up, because I think this is a very important resource for us to communicate what we're learning. We're going to put the video conferencing tools up there that we're using. We're going to try to show you which of these things are best for virtual conferences. We're going to use some of this stuff for our own leadership boards. And as you guys interact with us, I hope that my company leads by example.
Do you have any specific resources, any people or organizations or companies you follow on Twitter, any other virtual events, any newsletters you subscribe to, any podcasts you listen to that you would recommend from a trusted source, and some, other leaders in the industry that you would recommend participants check out?
Yeah, I share a lot of that on LinkedIn, and I'll share a lot more of that on our own Slack channel for this community now. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, again, I try to stay very plugged into groups outside of sports. So I look to those industries to kind of show me what's happening next. My wife, on a personal level, works at a company called Fuse, which is a company that does some of this virtual software for everybody. They compete with Slack, they compete with Microsoft for some of this, video conferencing stuff. So I learn a lot just from osmosis, and I'm always willing to share that stuff with you guys. And I'll do it here. Gina's sharing that link now.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, if you guys use this, what I want you to do is I want you to share what you're seeing as trends, right? I think we're all overwhelmed with headlines. We're all overwhelmed with links. We're all overwhelmed with stories. What I really push my company to do is say, these are 3 resources you could potentially look at for video, for a virtual conference. These are 3 resources you could look at for doing a virtual whiteboarding session. These are 3 resources you could use. So give people a sense that there's a bunch of things that they can turn to get deep in one area, rather than hitting them with a bunch of, one-offs. And the one that I'll share with you that I just did an awesome demo with, and Abe is on here too, so if he wants to share that link, I think it was called Hop Into. Is a beautifully designed new startup. They're only about 1.5 years old. And we did a demo with them the other day. They have really taken the conference experience and turned it into a virtual experience, where you literally have breakout rooms where if 2 people that are on a video conference want to go off and have a separate conversation about their particular business or about an issue that they don't want to share with everybody else, those features have been built into that platform, and it's really cool to see.
Are you hearing anything in regard to potential government efforts to assist the sports and entertainment industries to help mitigate some of the economic impact?
I think that's going to come from across the board. And again, this is just my opinion. I have nothing to back this up other than what I've seen them do with subsidies for small businesses and other areas that have been hurt by this, and what discussions I'm following on other chat boards, there does seem to be some sort of government aid that's going to come out and try to help. I don't know where that's going to be targeted and why. I do find tremendous comfort in what I see Mark Cuban and others doing, where they're really taking care of their own organizations first and not relying on others from the outside to help. And hopefully we'll see more leadership from that contingency. And then if the government comes in later, that will be a welcome relief.
Do you think now is a good time for people to start also getting educated and learning about tools that might enhance live experiences for when the venues do reopen? Do you think our industry is going to be able to take that time or think about that now?
Again, this comes to my hope. My hope is that they are absolutely going to look at, the types of access control systems, the types of cameras, the types of fan engagement software that can be used. One of the things we've talked about for a long time is how do you connect the in-venue crowd with the out-of-venue crowd, right? So when you look at FanCam and Breezy and some of these cameras that are designed to make that in-person fan experience relevant, we've always been saying, well, that's great for them, but how do you make that immediately relevant, not after the game, but immediately relevant to the fans that are at home? And why isn't there a partnership between the Ciscos and the people that are doing the in-venue stuff with the broadcasters that are at home, and really making sure that there is a community exchange or a social exchange between those two audiences? That is a very important area for the Sports Innovation Lab to push people on, because I think those two groups need to be able to interact more. And if those systems are set up to do that, it does serve as a little bit of a backup plan for situations like this.
Awesome. So we've been chatting for a little over 45 minutes. Probably a good time to make a last call for any questions into the chat window. Or Josh, if you've got any questions on your mind that you wanted to make sure and touch on before we all leave today. Ask him anything. Where'd he get that nice jacket? Anything's on the table.
Well, my home office is not the right temperature, so I have to talk to the landlord about that. Look, I mean, it's a pleasure and really an honor to be able to convene you guys. And I mean that at the core of my being. I'm going to continue to share positivity on LinkedIn. I encourage you guys to do the same. People in this industry are looking for leaders, and I expect that the people that participated today can take that role. Opting into this conversation is step one. Opt into the Slack community is step two. And if you haven't seen this, again, we've made this available to all of you guys. Let me just grab it. Where's my browser? This is available for you guys. If you sign up for the app right now, you can just follow everything that's happening. And this isn't to overwhelm you. This is specifically designed to give you comfort that you're seeing pretty much everything that we're seeing that's happening around the industry. So again, what we're going to do over the next few weeks is organize this so you can see it clearly in a data pattern, which is how many of these things are getting canceled, how many are getting postponed, how many are being produced digitally only. And then what I'm really looking for, and what I am very eager to share, is when technology vendors start to make their way into the solutions that are being produced in the short term, we should be able to point you to the vendors that are taking an active role in helping people out. So I would love to start being able to share what are the automated cameras that are coming in, what are the social media platforms that are doing things, what healthcare companies are partnering with venues to make things more secure. Our software is capable of identifying those patterns, and I'm eager to share that with you guys here on our app, but also on the Slack channel. And again, I hope you guys feel like you can reach out to us with any questions that you're having. This was the first time we're doing this, and we'll do it as often as it's helpful to the community. So thank you guys for joining today.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everyone. We are going to make this recording available to everyone as well. So we'll send you guys a follow-up email with a link if you'd like to rewatch or share this session. Again, I've put the link to the Slack community in the chat window, so check that out. And we're going to get as specific as virtual software during this time, recommendations, free downloads. So really think of that Slack community as a resource for all of you. And if you enjoyed this, let us know and we'll do more of them in the future. So thanks everyone, and please be safe.